All right. What's up, guys? Hey, listen, I'm so excited to do this video. So, this is going to be the first video in a series that I'm going to call Budgeting 101. The first part is going to be understanding your numbers. So, I sent a video out a while back, and the most comments that I got across all platforms and messages was just about like the basics about budgeting, how to know what your numbers are, what to break them down into, and just kind of that fundamental foundational stuff, which is the exact reason that I started this channel. And honestly, anytime I'm doing one-on-one coaching with anybody, that's really where we start, is making sure that the other person understands their numbers, what their pay is, gross, their net, where they should be putting their money, what their real budget should look like, if they've even budgeted before, and what things they need to consider. So that's what we're going to go into. We're going to jump in. So I have a bunch of stuff on the computer, and so we're going to do a little bit of this, and then we're going to do some screen recording here, and I'll take you through some of the numbers. We've got a couple of examples. We'll do percentages, a lot of stuff here. So this is going to be my first really like long form video. So I'll try to cut this up and put it across some of the platforms for the shorter form stuff, but this will primarily be on my YouTube because that's the easiest and best way for me to share like long form material. And so, yeah, video one. All right, let's drop in. All right, guys, super excited to be with you today. We're going to be talking about a couple things. This is going to be our first video in the series, Budgeting 101. So that first video is going to be about understanding your numbers. So I put out a video maybe a week or so ago, and the overwhelming majority of comments and DMs that I got across all the platforms were about understanding budgeting. What do you consider? What numbers do you put in there? How do you break it down? How do you know your numbers? Just kind of a variety of things in that realm. And so we're going to dive into it today. We'll use a couple different examples, single income, two income household, and a one income household. And so we'll break those down. We'll throw some numbers up there just to give you an idea or a framework of how this should look or can look. And then, we'll kind of go from there. So I'm excited about it. It's going to be my first long form video. So it's going to be on a certain platform, YOUTUBE. I know I'm not supposed to say the name of some of these platforms because the algorithm will shut down my views. So I've learned that. And so it's going to be on the only platform where you can really do super long form type of content, and I'll try to chop it up and put it on everything else in like pieces. So that's the drill, and let's get into it. All right, so the first thing out the gate, what is my actual money? Okay, so this is going to be understanding the difference between what you earn and what you actually take home. Super important. We got to start there. All right, this is one of the foundations of financial literacy. Okay, so let's jump in. All right, so here we go. So our first part is going to be gross versus net income. Okay, so hopefully you've heard of these terms. We're going to break them down a little bit to make sure that you're really clear on the difference. All right, so your gross income is your total earnings before deductions. So let's say you are making a salary, okay, of $60,000. That is going to be your gross income, the total amount of money that you're going to be paid out for the year. Now, this is before deductions. And we'll talk a little bit about deductions, but one of the common deductions, of course, is taxes, health insurance, and maybe that you're signed up for retirement accounts or something like that, a 401k, a Roth, 457, a pension that is required for you to pay out, something like that. All right. So those are going to be your deductions. So gross income, remember, straight amount of whatever you make in a year that your company is going to pay you. 50,000, 32,000, 60, 100, whatever that is, that's your gross before anything comes out. Then your net income, it's also called your take home pay. So if you hear take home pay, they're talking about net income. Your take home pay is after all of those deductions we just talked about. Once those are removed, whatever actually hits your bank account on payday, that is your net income. Okay, so if you get paid on the 15th or the 30th or bi-weekly, on the 15th, when you look at your Bank of America or Ally or Wells Fargo bank account, whatever that number is, that is your net income. Now, the gap between those two, like we talked about, are those deductions. It reduces your paycheck before you receive it. And so the exact difference is going to vary by your, what you're taking out for taxes. Sometimes people may take out less because how much tax strategy do we want to get into? They may take out less or they may take out more to account for other things. Okay. And so also we'll hit on the retirement, but that's kind of an optional deduction depending on where you're at in this season. So that's not a given. We're going to use some examples as we move forward, and we're not going to talk about retirement in there because that's not everybody's starting point. You may have debt. That's more of a thing that you need to focus on right now. You may need to do a emergency fund or 3 to 6 months savings before you really get into sending money over to that retirement. But you can do that through your company typically, and that can come out of your check before it hits your bank account. So that's why I wanted to have that on there, because some of you already have that set up. All right, but the main deductions are going to be taxes. Got to pay Uncle Sam. That's coming out. Oh, here we go. W-2 employees and 1099 employees. Okay, so most of you are probably W-2 employees. That means you work for a company, you filled out the tax paperwork, and when they pay you on your pay stub, taxes are taken out and you're getting some kind of employee benefits. Okay, if you have a 1099 job, then you will have no deductions and no taxes taken out when you are paid because you are considered a contractor. You're typically not eligible for any benefits from the company because you don't really work for them. You're just coming in, whether it's temporarily or for an assignment or through a different company. Okay, so 1099 employees, you have other considerations. You have to make sure you account for your own taxes. You probably have to get your own insurance, unless you have, sometimes people will do, let's say they have a full-time job, and as a second job, they're a 1099 contractor or like a gig worker or something like that. But they're getting straight pay, the exact amount. So if you make $100 for a company that day, they're paying you $100. They're not taking anything out. Okay, so you'll have to account for taxes on the back end. That's a separate conversation. All right, health and wellness. We have, of course, our health, dental, and vision, our medical insurance that typically comes out of your check before you get it in your account. And then sometimes some people may be signed up for life insurance, disability, or flex spending. So the flex spending account, for those who aren't familiar with that, that is going to be an account that you can sign up for. It has a limit each year. I believe 2026 is about $3,400 is the limit for 2026. And what that is you can pre-tax, that money will come out of your account and go into this flex spending account on, like, let's say January 1st, 2026, you signed up to put $2,000 in a flex spending account. They'll send you a little card, just like a debit card, credit card, and it'll have $2,000 on there. Now, it will break down. So let's say you get paid once a month. It'll take that $2,000 out in 12 increments. So Every month that you get paid, it'll take a 12th of that money out until you eventually add up to 2,000. But you can use the 2,000 on January 1st. So you can use it immediately and it'll slowly basically pay itself back as you get paid through your company. Now, the benefit of it is you can use it for healthcare type of items. So if you have prescriptions, if you go to the doctors, if you have copays, medical equipment that you may need, all those things, and it's pre-tax. So if you make 60 and you put 2,000 to that, you will only get taxed for 58,000. That 2,000 will come out and go to that flex spending. So it lowers your taxable income, and it also allows you to kind of set aside some of that money for health care type purposes. Okay. All right. So I think we did that. Gross and net income. We know what those are. That's going to be important moving forward. Let's hop to the next thing. All right, so here we go. We're going to dive into a few of the budgeting approaches. Okay, so this one is going to be the 50-30-20 rule. This is going to be a pretty balanced approach to budgeting. All right, now as we move forward, we're going to go over the 50-30-20, the 70-20-10, and zero-based budgeting. Okay, so those are going to be the three that we'll go over in this video. Now, remember, everything is going to be dependent on your situation, your season. There is no one right way to budget for any person. Okay, so for me, I may say, hey, a zero-based budget is the best option for me. I need to have every dollar assigned somewhere, very specific. And then other people may need a little bit more freedom in their budget. So the 50-30-20 is a good option. So it really just depends. The key of it is that you know your numbers and you know where your money is going and you have a system. It doesn't have to be the exact same system for everyone. Okay, so this is one option. And so the 50-30-20, what that refers to is 50% of your budget is going to go to needs, 30% is going to go to wants, and then that other 20% is going to be into the savings and debt. Okay, so this is a widely adopted budgeting method, and so we're all going after your after-tax income. Okay, so that's going to be your net income, your take-home income. That's where this is going to be divided into. So first off, the 50% needs. So these are needs are going to be essential expenses, right? Housing, so your mortgage, your rent, your utilities, groceries, and insurance premiums. So I'll leave there's a little caveat on that, right? Because I said after tax, so your take home and your health insurance has already come out. If you're a W-2 employee, right? If you're a 1099 employee, then you had nothing taken out, so you would still be paying those insurance premiums from this bucket. Okay, now this could also be, let's say you have life insurance, disability insurance, things like that that you're paying after tax. It's not automatic deduction on your payroll. Then yes, this would be coming out of here. All right, and then for groceries, sometimes people just put food as groceries, but that's not the same thing. Okay, groceries are anything that you put in your refrigerator or in your pantry. That's what we are considering groceries. All right, if you're doing Uber Eats, that's more considered a want. That's more of like eating out, dining out. Uber Eats, stuff like that is all considered dining out, at least the way that I do it. And so that would not be in your needs category, or any kind of, restaurants in general, or going out to eat with friends is more like entertainment type of thing. All right. So that's your 50% for needs, 30% for wants. Okay. So discretionary spending, like we said, could be dining out, could be hobbies. So maybe, you have a sports league that you play in. Maybe your kids play in a sports league or club team. I'm not at that stage yet, but I know from friends how expensive some of that is. Entertainment, travel, that's all going to be in that wants category. And then your 20% in savings and debt. So this could be contributions to an emergency fund, 3 to 6 month savings fund. It could be retirement accounts. So typically the like well accepted percentage for retirement is like 15%. You want to be doing at least 15% or more into retirement accounts, and like I said, it's all depending on what season you're in and what the priority is at that time. This could also be if you're saving for kids' college. That would also be in this category. And then extra debt payments. All right, so this is really broad, that 20% savings in debt. So it really is life dependent. If you are just getting out of school and you have student loans, then maybe a heavier part of that 20% is going to be paying off student loans and debt payment. If you're in your 50s and you're trying to, just save for retirement and boost your retirement, then maybe that 20% is all retirement accounts. Maybe your kids are already out of college, right? So it is just going to be kind of open to where you're at. All right, so this one's best for individuals looking for a simple, sustainable lifestyle without the need of meticulous transaction tracking. Okay, so everyone understands 50, 30, 20. We'll jump back to that later, and we'll look at some numbers from some examples as well. All right, let's go to the next one. All right, so now we're on to our next one, which is the 70-20-10 rule. So this is living on less, kind of the little title for that one. So this budget is a leaner budget, okay? It is ideal for those focusing on accelerating wealth or managing higher housing costs. Okay, so here's the difference here, right? On our last one is that 50-30-20. And so we had basically 80% on that 50-30. That was between needs and wants. So this cuts that down by 10%, right? Because now we're going 70 combines your needs and wants into one category, gives you some flexibility in daily spending while ensuring essentials are covered, right? So it actually cuts it down by 10%, and then we see that 10% shift over here to either debt in its own category or giving. So let's say that you are tithing at your church. Your 10% is coming out off the top of your income, and that's off your gross income, right? Because you want to pay the Lord before you pay Uncle Sam. And so 10% would be coming out early, or if you're just using that 10% for debt payment, then this is allocated to aggressively pay off debt or charitable contributions. So maybe you give to like Red Cross or some other kind of organization or ministry, right? And then 20% in savings. So it has its own category that is specifically for savings. So that could be 5% into like a high yield savings. So you have some liquid cash, and then a 15% into retirement. That could be, any kind of breakdown. 10% go into some other kind of, 529 for your kids for college, and then 10% going to retirement. You can kind of cut that up however you want, but it's more of a significant portion dedicated to investments, emergency fund, or long-term financial goals. All right, so this is best for individuals with clear debt repayment goals, or those managing high fixed costs, or who prefer a simpler combined approach to their living expenses. All right, questions? Okay, sounds good. Let's go to the next. All right, we are on to our third and our last budgeting option here. So this is going to be our zero-based budget, and we call this the accountability strategy. So it's not going to be percentage-based. It's more of a mission-based rule. So every dollar is assigned a job until you reach zero. So you may have heard of this option if you consume any of the Dave Ramsey content. This is the option that he always will talk about, and that they use for the Every Dollar app. And it's a really great option. It is a lot stricter and more stringent, and sometimes that's better, especially for people who are just starting out. in figuring out their budget and trying to get those initial numbers down and that discipline down. Once you kind of have a system and you know are kind of used to doing a budget, then maybe you transition to one of the other two that we talked about. But this is a really great option. Takes a little bit more work. Okay, so this is kind of how it works. So income minus your expenses needs to equal 0. So your total income minus every single category, needs, wants, savings, debt, has to work itself down to 0. So like we said, every dollar has a name. So you decide where it all goes, but you're deciding before the month begins. All right. So it gives you total control. So if you have $50 left at the end of the month, you don't just spend it. That's not like free cash. You assign it to a category like car repairs or extra debt payments. Okay. So one of the things with this is usually there's something called sinking funds, which we'll kind of talk about as we go. But essentially, a sinking fund is a fund that you create that will go to pay for an expected need. So Christmas is a great one to use for an example. All right. So we all know Christmas comes up once a year in December, and you have gifts or presents that you want to buy for family or friends. What a lot of people will do is we'll get close to Christmas. We'll get into that like October, November time period, and they're like, oh my gosh, Christmas is coming up. People are trying to buy stuff during Black Friday for it. They haven't saved for it. Super stressful. They don't know, where the money's coming from and feel a lot of pressure around Christmas. So a sinking fund is, I'm going to say, okay, in December for Christmas, I want to spend $1,000. So actually, let's do easier. Let's do $1,200. Okay, I'm going to do $1,200 for Christmas. Every month, starting in January, you're going to save $100 and put it into a sinking fund. Okay, so that could be a sub account in your bank, that could be an envelope system, that could be, you just putting it into your high yield savings account and kind of bookmarking what that money's for. And then every month you continue just to put in $100. In December, when you put in your last 100, you will have your $1,200 that you have put together for Christmas, all in that sinking fund, and it will be a lot less stressful. So you could do something like that for your $50, but you always want to give it an assignment. You don't just want to spend it. You want to be intentional about it. And so another sinking fund one is car repairs or car maintenance. Things happen with cars, it comes up. So having that fund ready to go is always good, because you don't want to get used to just taking that from an emergency fund. If it's a true emergency, like your car breaks down on the road, you get a flat and you have to get it fixed, then yes. But like, hey, it needs to get its $15,000, not sorry, $15,000, 15,000 mile maintenance. Like, it's going to need that eventually. So just save for that on the front end. All right. So this is best for people who feel like their money disappears and they want 100% awareness of their spending habits. So like I said, really great when you're starting out, as you're trying to figure out your numbers and really get used to where that stuff is going. Now, the big thing with the zero-based budgeting, what can happen, and this is what I've seen a lot with my clients, is when you set it up, you want to do these really broad categories, and it doesn't help you as much as you think it will. You're like, oh, I've put money to every single thing, and it's like food, like we talked about. Groceries is different. Dining out is different. If you have a snack budget, like if you go get coffee during the day, or you go get an energy drink or a snack at work, like set yourself a snack budget. So you want to break every single one of those categories down very specifically. The miscellaneous category tends to be the Amazon category. And so you also want to break that down. If there's home decor, if there is, certain things that you buy off of Amazon, whether it's like toiletries or hair products, break all of that stuff down into separate categories so that you know how much you're spending in each one. And some of you probably don't want to do that, because then you'll know what you're spending in each one. But That's how zero base works. Okay. All right. Let's go to the next. Okay. So we've gone over three different budgeting options, right? Our 50, 30, 20, our 70, 20, 10, and our zero base budget. All right, so now let's actually look at our three families. So we're going to introduce our three families, and we're going to use examples with some real numbers so that we can kind of see what that actually looks like in a real life scenario. All right, so here's our three families. All right, we're going to use this to illustrate how different budgeting methods apply in real world scenarios. All right, so let's meet our hypothetical households with diverse financial realities. All right, so first up, we have our single professional. Okay, so this is a single family household. This is just you and full-time professional earning a median income of $63,000. Okay, so and where I'm getting these numbers, I did some research on what the average household amounts were for a single filer, for a two income household with like a family of four with two kids, and then a single income family of three. Okay, so that's where these numbers, I didn't just like, hey, let's make up some random numbers out of the air. This is based on stats from the Census Bureau of what are, so not 100%, but gives you kind of a good idea. Hopefully you can see yourself. I think 63,000. That's probably a good average. Some people may make less than that. Others of you are making more than that as a single professional. So this would be about 70,000 each, or maybe one makes a little bit more, a little bit less, and then this is 83 for a single earner with a wife or a husband with one kid. Okay, so we're gonna go into a little thing with them and start talking some numbers through their scenarios. All right, so let's look at their starting points. So if we're gonna look at budgeting strategies effectively, we first need to understand the net income, right? We talked about gross and net. So we just saw the gross income, the 63,000 for our single professional, the 140 for our family of four, and the 83 for our family of three. Okay, but after taxes and health insurance and all those things, we're going to be going off of net income for each family after those essential deductions are taken out. All right, so let's go to our single professional first. We have the gross income, 63,000. They are single filer for taxes. Health insurance is going to run an average of about $1,440 a year, and their FICO taxes based on their income and being a single filer would be around $7,700. So that means that their monthly take-home pay or their net income is going to be about $4,085 a month. Okay, so that's the number we're going to be going off of when we start breaking things down into that 50, 30, 20, 70, 20, 10, or that zero-based budget. All right, so then we'll jump over to our family of four with the $140,000 of gross income. They're going to be doing married filing jointly. Their health insurance is going to be a lot more, okay, because they are paying for all the dependents as well. FICO is going to be up, but their monthly take home is going to be about $8,460. And then our family of three with the 83,000, also married filing jointly, also very, very expensive for health insurance because usually, it could vary. Some health insurances may add a price with per kid, but from what I've seen and my personal health insurance, once you add a child on there, it's just a family rate. So it doesn't like, oh, you have one kid, it's this price, two kids, this price. No, it's wife and kid or kids, this price. So it would be the same as the family with 4. So that's why that number is that. And then the federal FICO is 12,700. All right. And then their monthly take home, I'm kind of covering a little bit of that, but is going to be 5,310. Okay. All right. Let's go to the next. Okay. So we just saw our families, met our 3 families. We're going to do a little bit of a recap on the needs, wants, and savings areas. So category 1 is needs, non-negotiables. Okay. Remember we talked about housing, rent or mortgage. So property tax, homeowners or renters insurance would come out of this as well. And so for some of you with your mortgage, your property tax is included in that, and your homeowner's insurance. Some of you may be paying property tax separately, but that would all come out of housing. Utilities, electric, water, sewer, natural gas, trash. Connectivity is going to be your internet and your cell phone. It used to be a cell phone was like a want, but people don't have landlines anymore. And so it is definitely a need if you are a working professional to have a cell phone. Transportation, so this is usually vehicle payment, fuel, basic maintenance, insurance. It could be, if you're in like a major, like New York type of city, then maybe that's like Uber or some kind of car service where you don't have your own vehicle. However bus pass, subway pass, Metro card, whatever. So whatever that looks like for you to get to work and get to where you need to go, that's going to fall into here. Groceries, we talked about essential foods, right? That's the stuff in your refrigerator and your pantry that goes into here. And then health care. So insurance premiums, they may be coming out of your W-2 payroll deductions. And then if you're 1099, you'll have to pay that from this after your money hits your bank. But if you also have prescriptions, any kind of co-pays, things like that for doctor's visits, that will come out of needs. Okay. And then category 2 is going to be wants, right? Lifestyle choices. So it may improve the quality of life, but they can be cut in a crisis. So these are things that are not necessities. They improve your life, but if something happens, if you lose a job, if another, let's say a medical priority is more expensive in a season, and so you need to cut back on things, these are things that you can cut back on. Okay, so this is going to be dining and entertainment. So restaurants, takeout, that's that Uber Eats, DoorDash category. Coffee shop, your Starbucks or Dutch Bros or Dunkin' or whatever the one of your choice is. Concerts, movie tickets, things like that. Travel, so that could be the vacation fund, weekend trips, all those things. Shopping, and so it says new clothes beyond the basics. So yes, you do need some clothes. Some people have a budget for work clothes, and they have to have uniforms for maybe school or whatever the thing is. Those are probably more can kind of maybe get pushed to a need if you have some required. But this is like you're buying outfits to go out with your friends on the weekend. This is that kind of shopping. This is Amazon, home decor stuff that is not required unless you're, just sleeping on the floor in an empty apartment. I guess you can make an exception there. But hobbies, so gym membership, sports equipment, club fees, sports clubs, and traveling teams and stuff for kids as well. Sometimes that can feel like a need, but that would go into the wants category. All right, so digital subscriptions, it's a want. Okay, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Paramount, on and on. Tubi, anybody got a Tubi subscription? All right, so all of that's in here. And then any kind of self-care, getting haircuts, going to the spa, getting nails done, any of those things are all going to be in here. All right. And then our category 3, our savings and debt. All right, so this category is focused on future financial security and paying off the past. So we have our emergency fund. Okay, so that's our liquid cash set aside for unexpected repairs and job loss. So that's what we touched on earlier. So this is not for the 15,000 mile, um, you know, tune up that your car needs every so often. Like that is an expected repair. That is an expected maintenance thing. And so we should be maybe using a sinking fund for that. This is for, I'm driving down the highway and my tire bursts. Something goes out, my battery dies while I'm, trying to get out of the parking lot, something like that. All right, minimum debt payments. So, absolute minimum required for any credit cards or loans to avoid default. Aggressive debt payments. So, this is paying off more than the minimum. So, this is when we're in our debt payment strategy. Any kind of retirement contributions that we're doing, education savings, that could be 529s, that could be UGMAs, that could be whatever you have set up for the kids. Maybe you just have a traditional IRA you're putting money to. Major purchase savings, so saving for a home down payment, new car, things like that. So that could also be sinking funds, right? We're putting money every month for a fund to do a down payment for a house or to replace the car that's aging. Investment portfolio, so yeah, stocks, wealth building assets. So it could be crypto, could be maybe some other like real estate investment stuff, kind of open to whatever you're into. Okay, so now we're going to look at some budget category suggestions by percentage. Okay, so this is, we looked at the 50, 30, 20, 70, 20, 10, and zero based. Okay, so this is not that. This is something different. All right, so as you're looking at the numbers, don't think, okay, well, how does that fit into the 50 or the 30? So this is when people start having conversations. Now, actually, you can use this for your zero based, just kind of as a framework. But as people start having conversations about how much should I be paying for certain things, like, hey, what should my housing budget be? So just saying, well, it should be a 50, 30, 20. You're like, okay, but 50 is housing and it's, utilities and it's all of the needs. So what about just housing? What about just transportation? So this is kind of looking at that. So some of the suggestions for what your percentages should be. So if your housing, we'll go over to housing. If your housing is 40% of your take home pay, you are off balance. Probably the reason that your money is not stretching the way you want it to is because you're paying too much for housing. So that may be you live in a very expensive area. So maybe you are in New York City. And so your housing is more. Your housing is 40%. Well, then your transportation cost is probably going to be what takes the hit there. Maybe you don't have a car, so you're not paying for car payments and things like that. And so you have a 5% transportation cost because you ride the subway, but you have a 40% housing percentage. So that balances itself out. Maybe you live in LA and you got your own home, so your housing cost is really high. You're gonna have to take percentage from somewhere else to kind of balance that thing out. But typically, these are some of the suggestions for housing should be around 25 to 30%, transportation 10 to 15, food 10 to 15, insurance about 10%, savings and investments 20%, so that could be 5% for savings once you have your emergency fund and your 3 to 6 months, and then the other 15 is going to investments, 5 to 10 for utilities, and then 5 to 10 for entertainment. Okay. Now, if let's say you have a emergency fund, you have your 3 to 6 months, and you're investing 15%, then maybe you take 5% of that and you put it down here to personal entertainment to give yourself some more room for vacations and trips and going out with your friends. So there's a guy, Ramit Sethi. If you've seen him, consume some of his content. He had a big thing on Netflix many years back, but he's current. You can find him on any social media platform. But he talks a lot about living your rich life. So that's kind of his tagline. And what that means, how he's explained it, is you put money towards the things that are your rich life, that make you happy, that your goals that you want to pursue. So if travel is a thing that you're like super passionate about, then adjust all of your numbers to make sure that you have money to do travel. And so you work your budget out to accomplish the goals that you have. If you love going on cruises, then maybe you're not going out to eat very often. You're not ordering takeout, and you're saving all that money for your cruise budget. So it's just about finding where you're at in that season and then putting your money towards that. If you are still currently paying off debt and you're not consumer debt free, which consumer debt free means that the only debt that you have is your house, okay, your mortgage. Debt free would be your mortgage is paid off too, but consumer debt free is like consumer products like credit cards and loans and things like that. But if you aren't debt free, then this 20% would probably be where your debt repayment is going in as well. So investments would probably be taken out, and it would be savings and debt, kind of like you saw in some of the other examples. Okay, let's move on and let's look at our families again, and we're going to break down their numbers with these percentages. All right, so now we are back with our three families, and we're going to jump in for our single professional. So I'm going to talk about our single professional like it is me. All right, so my net take-home pay is $4,085. So that was what we calculated off the $63,000 gross income based on the taxes and health insurance being taken out. So this is the take-home pay. Okay, so I'm going to be a W-2 employee for this. So housing, I put down 30%, so that's $1,225.50. That will cover either rent or mortgage and renter's insurance, transportation costs, $408.50, car payment, fuel, and auto insurance. 15% for food. I'm a big boy. I need $612.75 to eat. That covers my groceries for the month. Savings and investments, $817 at 20%. Okay, so that's emergency fund, 3 to 6 months savings account, a Roth IRA, 401k, whatever I'm investing in. And that would also be the category if I had debt, where the debt repayment would come out of. Utilities, $408.50 at 10%. So that's going to cover my electricity, water, trash, and internet. And then personal entertainment's at 15%, $612.75. So that's me eating out, my softball league and my Netflix. Okay. And then for insurance, did zero for that because that was already deducted. So all I have is health insurance, and that's going to already be deducted from my W-2, from my gross income. So that was already gone before I had my take home. Okay, so that's why that's at zero. Now, remember, if you are a 1099 employee, you would not have that payroll deduction, so you would need to set aside money for health insurance here. If you have life insurance, that would also need to go here. And what other? Yeah, disability insurance, something like that. Okay. All right. So this is kind of gives you an idea of what it should look like. So once you understand what your take-home pay is, you have a range of those percentages for all of your categories, your housing, your transportation, your food, however you want to break that down, then you can start kind of looking at your numbers in a different way, and then you can figure out your strategy. Hey, I want to do a zero base budget because I'm just starting out. So I want to really understand where every dollar is going. So what you would do, so if you're looking at this housing, right? If I'm doing a really any, even if I'm doing not even a zero based or a 50, 30, 20, I'm still going to have some category breakdowns where I would separate like my rent from my renter's insurance. Because maybe I want to understand like, hey, what am I paying per year, per month for renter's insurance? Do I have the best rate? Maybe when I look at it, I'm going to shop around and try to find a better renter's insurance rate. But if it's just 12.25 for everything, then I can't really tell like, hey, if I pay it all at one point, what's actually going to just the rent, what's actually going to renter's insurance. So you want to break those things down. Transportation costs, okay. So let's say maybe I live in a very affordable area, low cost of living. So maybe my housing is 25%. Okay, so I would take off what, $20? Sorry, $200 something. Yeah, 200. Uh Math on top of my head. Okay. And then you could put that to transportation. So maybe your fuel cost was high or insurance costs, maybe you're 21 or 22 and your insurance cost is a little bit higher, so you need some more money to put into that. Then you could throw that over there. And if you're doing like a zero based budget, then I would have my car payment in one category, I'd have my gas fuel costs in another, I'd have my insurance in another, and I'd have, maybe my vehicle maintenance sinking fund or something there as well. Um, Food, just groceries. Maybe I don't need $612. So maybe I drop that down to 10% and I put that extra 5% somewhere else. Maybe my utilities cost, my electricity bill and stuff is really expensive where I live, or internet, and my phone bill is more expensive. So I toss maybe 2% over here to make that 12, and I put the other 3 into savings and investment. So you can kind of, flex that around however you want. Hey, I have debt that I'm trying to pay off. I'm trying to become debt free, and so that's really your focus in this season. Well, then I'm going to be really lean in some of these other categories. I'm not going to live in as expensive of a house or an apartment, so I'm going to drop this down to 20% for my apartment, and then I have to keep this there, so I can't move that around, but I'm gonna, go to Aldi instead of Whole Foods, and I'm gonna lower my food costs by 5%. So now I've just found 15%, and I'm gonna throw that 15% into here, and that's gonna be now 35%. That extra money is gonna just go to paying off debt, or maybe I'll knock off 10% off personal entertainment, or 5%. Hey, I still need to buy, you know, hair products and clothes for work or whatever the things are, but I'm gonna get rid of my streaming services and I'm not going out as much. So I'll cut some of that there and throw that into my debt repayment as well. So you can really flex those numbers however you want, depending on what your life season is. Okay. All right. So let's go look at our second example. Okay. So now we have our second family. This is our dual income family of 4, and that was the income $140,000, and their take-home pay per month is that 8,460. Okay, so 30% is going to be their $2,538. Their 10% for transportation, 846. 15% for food, 1269. We got their savings and investments at 1692 at 20%. So if you see now that they got 2 kids, right? So now they're saving for college with the 529. They have their utilities, 846, and personal entertainment, $12.69. So their kids are involved in some extracurriculars. So I think one or two of them are in some club teams, which are taking up the bulk of probably this $12.69 from what I hear. And then once again, the insurance is 0% because that is already deducted from payroll deductions. Okay, so this one is probably pretty accurate here. Family of four, uh, 3-4 bedroom house, depending on where you're living at, and that 30%. So like we talked about earlier, you can kind of flex that depending on what your cost of living. Maybe you live in a high cost of living or a low cost of living. So your percentage for housing may go up or down depending on that, but you would just work to find some of that somewhere else. So usually that's going to be in this category, your savings or investment category, and your personal entertainment category. Housing is going to be what it's going to be. You have to live somewhere. So those prices, while you can, make very conscious decisions to lower them, sometimes they're just set. Like apartment rates in Texas are going to be what they're going to be. And so you're going to have to pay it if you want to live in a decently safe area. You're going to be paying a little bit of money, and there's only so much that you can do to offset that cost. You can shop around sometimes with utilities, but sometimes you may live in an area where they only allow you to have a certain company. Maybe Encore or Reliant or something is the only company that you can have. And so you don't really have a lot of options to shop around for a lower price if you want to get electricity. Sometimes even with internet too, if you have a house, only certain companies will work in your area. So sometimes those costs can be a little bit more difficult to shop around and get a better option. But your food costs you can kind of work with depending on where you're shopping, what kind of food ingredients you need. Maybe you have a set diet or like health issues where you have to eat certain types of products. So that could maybe limit or restrict that. But your car is going to be one. What type of car you buy, whether it's new or used or leased, and some of those payments, that's going to be something that you can find some leeway in. And then of course your savings and investment stuff. Okay. All right, let's go on to our last one. So here's our family of three. So this is the single income family of three. That was the $83,000 with the 5310 take home pay. All right. So same breakdown, 30%. That's what that looks like. 10%, 15, 20% here. Utilities, 10%, 15% for personal entertainment, and then insurance already taken out. Okay. And yeah, so hopefully this gives you kind of a decent idea of what it can look like. And everything, of course, like we talked about, is going to be dependent on your life season, what your specific goals are, and where you're currently at right now. So don't feel bad if you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't been saving for retirement, or I don't have my 3 to 6 month savings done, or man, I've been putting way too much in entertainment, or man, I don't know my numbers at all. So this is why I'm here. This is why you're watching the video. Hopefully, you've gotten some value from it, and it's been helpful to you. Okay. So last, I think I have maybe two more things. And we've been talking about this as we've been going, right? Some factors requiring budget adjustments. So cost of living. So if you're in a high demand urban area, that would be like a New York City, a Los Angeles, places like that, San Francisco, Chicago, maybe. They require a higher percentage of income for housing. So you have to reduce some of those other categories. If you're carrying a high debt load, so you have high interest obligations like credit cards, student loans, you have to shift some funds from savings or discretionary categories. So a discretionary category would be that personal entertainment to pay off that debt. Inflation, market fluctuations. So usually you'll see this in fuel costs. Sometimes price of gas will jump up, but sometimes it's down. Or maybe you live in a state with a high fuel costs that can change what your percentages will look like as well. Household size and life stage. So changes in family composition will, shift the balance there. So if you are that single income family of three, and then you have another kid, well, single income family of four, then will change what your priorities are, and maybe some of those categories will have to shift and move some money into other areas. Okay. Health insurance, yep, out of pocket max, varying deductibles, that can all change. And then income stability, variable or commission based, require more significant allocations to buffer. All right, so we didn't really touch on that. So what that is let's say that you do gig work or contract work. So we did talk about the 1099 stuff, but if you're part-time or you get hours based on need at a job, then your income is unstable or it's variable. And so, how you want to set up your budget is going to be a little bit different. So, if I have a W 2 job that is very consistent month after month, then yeah, I can pull my 1 month pay because I know it's going to be the same every month, and I can budget off of that 1 month pay. But if I have a variable income, what you want to do is you want to take the average of the last 3 months, and then you want to use that number to actually budget for your month to month. So let's say January, February, March. So I'm going to take those 3 months, and let's say in January I made 3,000, in February I made 5, and then in March I made 4,200. So I'm going to add those together, divide it by 3, and that's going to be the number that I use to budget as I move forward. Because, or that's one way. Another way, which is kind of like if you're like still a little nervous about those numbers, you're like, I'm using that average, but what if I hit that low month again, like I did earlier? And so you can actually use the lowest number in your 3 month. So that would be that January month. I think I said 3,000. So you would use 3,000 and you'd run a really lean budget. And so if you went over, made the 4,200, or you made the 5,000, well, you budgeted for 3. So you're going to have a lot of money left over. So you can throw that into a couple things. You can save it. So this is something that I think a lot of entrepreneurs and people who work for themselves will do. And so they will put that money aside because sometimes you have really good months, sometimes you have really bad months. So you want some liquid on the side so that you can cover your expenses when you're having a down month. Okay, so a lot of different options, a lot of different ways to work that out. All right. All right, so this budget model represents a proven framework, but it is not the only method for achieving financial success, right? And like we talked about, it's all going to be dependent on you, your family, your needs, your season. But hopefully, this gives you a great idea of how to understand your numbers, how to look at your numbers differently, and maybe some ways to attack that, okay? Um, every individual financial journey is unique, okay? But math is math, and so you can apply these concepts to your situation. So I'll do some more videos in this vein. We'll do some deeper dive into some other concepts, but hopefully this was helpful. Please let me know if there was something that really spoke to you in this, something you still have questions about. I would love to continue to provide value to you. And until next time, we'll catch you later. All right, guys, that was it. Hopefully that was really great for you. Hopefully you learned something new there. Please let me know in the comments kind of if there's anything that challenged you, anything you didn't know that was helpful for you, and anything you want me to do in a future video as well. So leave that down in the comments. Go ahead and push that subscribe button. There'll be more stuff coming from me soon. All right, we'll catch you later.